Hi, I'm Kenny, the co-founder of Aiskyra. We're really excited to launch our minor elements module. Over the last several months, many of you have asked us to design a minor elements module that is fast, easy to use, and flexible. And that's what we've designed for you to start using today. I'll walk you through how easy it is to use our tool, including how our AI drug information assistant can help you along the way. You'll also see how the tool helps you complete your documentation and provides clinical guidance as you go. The walkthrough has a number of chapters and sections, so feel free to click a specific chapter if you want to skip ahead. But stick around to the end, and I'll show you how our automated follow-up and one-click documentation copy is going to help you save a lot of time. Okay, let's get started. On the left sidebar, you will see the Minor Ailments button right here. When you click that, you'll be asked to select a pharmacy and pharmacist. If you have an individual pharmacist account, you can add up to 5 pharmacies. If you have a pharmacy account, you can add 5 or more pharmacists to one location. Here is the Minor Ailments menu. If you want to start a clinical assessment, just click this button. If you want to review previously written prescriptions, reprint them, or write a brand new prescription, click this button. The third option is the Pharmacist follow-up documentation tool, so you can view follow-ups that are due today or were overdue. The fourth button is where you can view if your primary care notification fax has gone through. But let's start with the clinical assessment. Assessments are sorted alphabetically or by body system. Let's start with allergic rhinitis as an example. Before you even begin the assessment, you'll see a quick 30-second eligibility check. We've designed a few questions that you can ask to quickly determine if the patient is likely to be eligible for the service. Just to be clear, the Ministry of Health and Ontario College of Pharmacists has not released a definitive guide on eligible versus ineligible patients other than for urinary tract infection and tick bites. For all the other minor ailments, Aiskyra gives you the documentation trail to support the clinical judgment call that you make. Let's pretend the patient is eligible. We're going to send them an intake and consent form. Just type in the patient's email and their first name and click send form. And in about a minute, the patient should receive an email with a link to complete the intake and consent form. Here's what the patient intake form looks like. It's very straightforward, asking for some personal details such as first name, last name, date of birth, address, email address, phone number, emergency contact information, health card information, whether or not have a doctor, as well as confirming consent. If we go back to the assessment page, just click refresh this page, and you'll see the completed patient intake form. You can view the intake form and edit any incorrect fields. Now let's start with the assessment. At the top, you'll see that the clinical assessment is organized into 10 sections: patient information, medical history, medication history, assessment, differentials, treatment, notification and consent, patient counseling, pharmacist follow-up, and review and finish. Aiskyra gives you the flexibility to skip to different sections, and if something is incomplete before you finish the assessment, we'll let you know in section 10. Now, some pharmacists like to actually see all of the red flags up first, so you can click that button, view all red flags, and now you can go through red flags related to medical history, medication history, signs and symptoms, differentials. For now, we'll just mark no red flags for everything. You will see in the later sections that my answers to these questions are copied over to the relevant sections. Now let's go back to section 1, patient information. You'll see that the intake form has been transcribed over to the clinical assessment form. We can ask about allergies, and we can ask about pregnancy and breastfeeding status. If the patient is pregnant and you click the flag, Aiskyra will provide some clinical guidance. Same thing if you click breastfeeding. For now, let's say pregnancy and breastfeeding status do not apply. Section 2 will collect a medical history. Let's say there's no other medical conditions. We've also included some risk factors for allergic rhinitis, which you can use as patient education opportunities. And you'll see the first red flag has already been selected no red flags because you answered that question earlier. Section 3 is medication history. You'll write down current medications as well as any past treatments that they've tried. Let's say this patient is actually currently on some birth control, and they've also told you that they want to get a refill of their LS before they leave the pharmacy. So let's pull up my notes, and I want to remind myself, fill patient's LS. And I'll look at it again at the end so I can remind myself. Previous treatments, let's say they've taken Reactin and it was effective. Once again, because we already filled out the medication history red flag earlier, it's already pre-selected based on my previous answer. Section 4 is the assessment, and we've included for all minor ailments the most common signs and symptoms. And as you select them, they'll be highlighted in green. There's also a text box if you want to report other signs and symptoms. We won't go into specifics for allergic rhinitis treatment, but it is individualized based off of the frequency, duration, and severity. So these are important questions to ask as they will be affecting first line, second line therapy. For now, I'll just say it's persistent and mild. And we've identified an allergen. And now we can see the red flag signs and symptoms. Now let's say you had a question about these signs and symptoms, and you want to know why something might be considered a red flag. Well, at the bottom right, you can click Ask Aiskyra, and it will bring up a mini window of Aiskyra, and you can ask your question directly. Why is only one nostril involvement considered a red flag in allergic rhinitis? And we'll send that. So what Aiskyra's AI Drug Information Assistant is doing in the background, it reads the question, understanding the context, and pulls relevant medical references that can help answer this question in an evidence-based manner. So these include references like the drug product monograph, practice guidelines, clinical pearls and tips, and much, much more. So if we review the answer, when symptoms are strictly unilateral, this strongly points away from generalized allergic or non-allergic rhinitis and serves as a major red flag for localized structural, neoplastic, inflammatory, or neurological etiologies that prompt diagnostic evaluation. References 2 and 3. So let's look at the references for 2 and 3. You can see here that Aiskyra has referenced a practice guideline. If I want to review it, I can click the reference, which will open up a brand new window and take me to the page from where the clinical claim was generated from. But let's close this for now. Section 5 are the differentials. For minor ailments, every differential table will include alternative conditions, as well as key features that help distinguish between the minor ailment and that condition. For example, with infective rhinitis, a key feature is fever, which you won't find with uncomplicated allergic rhinitis. Now let's say we weren't assessing for allergic rhinitis and we were actually assessing for mild acne. And one of these differentials is rosacea. And I don't remember what rosacea looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Derm images at the bottom left. It will pop up a small window and I can type rosacea. And so Aiskyra is pulling dermatological images from medical databases. And I can click any of these photos to be taken directly to the source. And this is a really cool tool for you to look up images very quickly to help you with your assessments. Let's move on. Section 6 is the treatment. And you'll see that because I selected persistent and mild, a specific recommended treatment shows up. Let's say I want to prescribe the second line treatment, which is an intranasal corticosteroid plus a second gen antihistamine. I'll select that line. And if I scroll down, you'll see that Aiskyra is displaying the list of drugs that are approved under Schedule 4 of the Ontario regulations. Now let's say I want to re-prescribe Reactin, the patient's had it before, and I want to add on mometasone. I'll click those two and I'll scroll down. At this point, I can actually generate the prescription right now, or I can wait till later. If I do want to prescribe right now, click this button to open up the documentation tool, and it opens up a brand new window. Step 1 of the prescription, double checking the prescriber information, which is your information, as well as the patient's information. If you pick the wrong profile, now's the time to switch pharmacists or pharmacies to make sure you have the right information for the prescription. Section 2 is selecting the medications. Because I selected cetirizine and mometasone from the treatment table, this search bar is automatically filled in with the name of the drug. I can now select a specific drug, or I can even just enter the drug entirely manually myself. But for now, let's just do a quick search. And I want to prescribe 20 milligrams. You can write your own SIG, or you can ask Aiskyra to suggest a SIG for you. You can write the quantity and the repeats. You can write additional notes. Now, let's say you want to see some more information about this drug. There's a button here, see more drug information. Click that. And you can see some helpful information at a glance, such as common side effects, counseling points, contraindications, typical dosing, drug-food interactions, drug-drug interactions, pregnancy and lactation information, general clinical notes, as well as the pack size, which will be helpful if you're prescribing a lotion or a cream, an ointment, etc. So while you are documenting your prescription, you can actually counsel the patient on the spot. Well, let's hide these details and let me finish the rest of this prescription. Step 3, you're going to review the prescription. Double check the patient information, your information, the medications, and if it's all good, you can digitally sign it with your mouse or anything with a touchscreen. I can save this now and print it later, or I can just print it right now. So now we're going to close the prescribing documentation tool, and we're back at the assessment tool. Let's go to the next section. Section 7 is the primary care notification, as well as patient consent documentation. If the patient has no primary care, click this flag, and other sections will be grayed out. You can also pull from a saved doctor if you've entered it before. So I'm going to pick a saved doctor and pretend this is the patient's primary care. And you can see the doctor and fax have been pre-filled. I'm just going to scroll down, and you can see the pharmacist selected treatment has been entered based on what I selected earlier. When prescribing, you also need to include a rationale. Is it indicated? Is it effective? Is it safe? Is the patient going to use it? And you can add other notes as well. So I've just written, patient has taken cetirizine before. It's effective, an additional nasal spray for nasal symptoms. Follow up in 1 week. We're going to fax this, so click fax. For the pharmacist and pharmacy information, you can insert it from the profile by clicking these buttons here. You can add your initials and go to the next step. Section 8 is patient counseling. For every minor ailment, we've included some suggested patient counseling. These are typically non-pharmacological measures, how to use the medication, medication side effects, as well as when to return or seek further care. We've also included a convenient patient self-monitoring table. Now let's say you want to print a handout for the patient. You can print this entire page by clicking this button, and it will bring up an editable handout, so you can delete what may not apply. Alternatively, if you only want to print the patient self-monitoring table, click Print Specific Counseling, click Patient Self-Monitoring, print selected, and you'll only see the patient monitoring table. You'll also see here, you need to acknowledge that you've counseled the patient. But for now, I'm actually not going to click this. And Aiskyra will remind me when I review the assessment. Section 9 is the pharmacist follow-up plan. You'll see that Aiskyra has suggested a follow-up of 7 to 14 days, but you can select when you want to follow up. For the purpose of demonstration, I'm going to follow up today. I'll do the follow-up, and I'm going to select email follow-up. This is because if you select email, and you have the patient's email and their consent, on the day of follow-up, Aiskyra will send an automated email with a link to a follow-up form that includes follow-up questions. And we're going to select those questions below. You may want to ask if they're getting any side effects, and you can also add your own questions. Now let's review and finish. You can see in step 10 that Aiskyra has identified 2 areas of the assessment that I have not yet completed. Section 8, patient counseling, and Section 9, pharmacist follow-up. If I go back to Section 8, you'll see that I did not acknowledge that I've counseled the patient. And in Section 9, you'll see I did not acknowledge that I've discussed follow-up, which I'm doing right now. If you go back to Section 10, those flags have disappeared. This section is also where you can preview the note to the primary care provider. This is what it looks like. A fax cover sheet followed by a notification to the primary care about the minor ailment that was assessed, the treatments that I've selected as a pharmacist, my rationale for prescribing, and any other additional notes. So I'm just going to click fax PCP notification, double check the information that's going on the cover sheet, and send the fax. And then it will be added to queue to be sent in the next few minutes. Now I'm ready to mark the assessment as complete. Just click the button, and now you can download the assessment as a PDF. There is a Start Prescribing button right underneath the assessment. You would only use this if you didn't already document your prescription, as I did earlier in the assessment. There's also another opportunity for you to print a patient handout, and you'll also see some billing codes here. And oh, I want to double check my notes because the patient also wanted me to help fill their LS. And when I'm done, I can erase all the notes. Or if there was a note that I wanted to insert into the assessment, I can click copy. I can reopen the assessment only to correct something. I can make that correction and I can mark it assessment complete again and download the new PDF. Now we're back at the minor ailments menu, and I want to show you how automated follow-up documentation works. On the day of the follow-up, Aiskyra will send an email to the patient with the link to ask them to answer follow-up questions. When they click that link, they actually need to verify their date of birth to continue with the questions. If it's incorrect, they will not be able to access these questions. So on the minor ailments menu, you can see that there's a number 3 in a red circle underneath pharmacist follow-up documentation. That's because there are 3 follow-ups that are either due or overdue. And now let's do the documentation. The outstanding follow-ups table includes the patient's name, the follow-up method, the minor ailment, the pharmacist that's responsible for the follow-up, and when this follow-up is due. So let's document the follow-up now. You'll see the top half includes what the pharmacist wrote in Section 9 of the clinical assessment. And the bottom half is the actual documentation that I'm going to perform. You can see the patient's emailed response. They said that their overall symptoms are better and that they have no problems at all when it comes to side effects. Based on what the patients responded, it's your clinical judgment whether or not you want to follow up even more, maybe via phone, or if you think follow-up is satisfied. So I'm going to click the date of follow-up, which is today, that I've completed it, and that no further follow-up is required. Now the follow-up is saved, and if I want to document this in another place, such as the dispensing software, just click Copy Follow-up Documentation, go to your dispensing software, and just paste it in. And if we go back to the main menu, and you'll see that follow-up documentation went from being 3 due to just 2. And if I want to check that the fax to the primary care provider has gone through, just click Send PCP Notifications, and you'll see it's been completed. So that's our walkthrough. I hope you can see that we've designed a fast, flexible, and easy to use minor ailments documentation tool that should fit seamlessly into your workflow. If you want to see this live in your pharmacy, you can book a demo with the link on the screen, or you can email me kenny@Aiskyra.com, and I read every message.